The storm outside had been raging for hours when the night that changed everything arrived. A night that would split my life into two parts, the years before her and everything after. The rain hammered against the rooftop of my small Tennessee home with a violence that echoed the turbulence inside my own heart. I had spent years convincing myself I was fine, years pretending my loneliness wasn't slowly wearing down the walls I'd built. But nothing prepared me for the moment Claire appeared at my door, soaked from the storm, trembling and carrying more heartbreak in her eyes than any one person should ever have to hold. If you believe in kindness, healing, and second chances, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps these stories reach more hearts. She stood on my porch with her wet hair clinging to her cheeks, her white shirt damp and knotted at the front, her breathing uneven as if she'd been running for miles. I hadn't seen Claire in nearly a year, ever since she'd moved out of our town after losing both her parents within months of each other. People heal differently. Some need closeness, others need distance. Claire had chosen distance, disappearing into the other side of the country with promises to stay in touch that time eventually washed away. But I never blamed her. Grief has no map and love has no expiration date. I knew that too well. When I pulled her inside and wrapped a towel around her shivering shoulders, I noticed how fragile she looked, yet something about her presence felt stronger than the storm outside. The living room was dim, lit only by the soft lamp beside my old leather couch. The familiar, safe scent of my home filled the space around us, and for the first time in a long while, her expression softened. She didn't speak at first. She didn't have to. Some emotions don't need words. They just need a place to rest. Claire had always been the kind of person who tried to carry everything alone, even things that were too heavy for her heart. She had been my best friend growing up, the person I laughed with on summer nights and leaned on during the worst winters of my life. But after her world collapsed last year, she never leaned on anyone, not even me. Seeing her again, seeing how tired and lost she looked, awakened a part of me I thought I had buried. She sat curled up on the couch, her hair tied up loosely, her clothes drying slowly in the warm air while the storm rattled against the window. She finally told me she had left California after realizing that running from pain didn't heal it. She had returned to Tennessee with no real destination, only a longing for something familiar, something safe. And somehow, that longing had brought her to my doorstep in the middle of a storm. As she spoke, I felt the weight of her fear, the quiet cracking of a heart trying to mend itself. She told me she hadn't slept in days, that her nights had been filled with memories she wasn't ready to face alone. She said she didn't know why she came here specifically, but that part wasn't hard for me to understand. Sometimes a soul remembers where it felt most at peace, even when the mind forgets. The storm worsened, thunder shaking the glass. Claire flinched at one particularly loud crack, her breath hitching. I instinctively moved closer, offering comfort without forcing it. I had always been careful with her feelings, even when I wanted to tell her everything I had buried for years. But this wasn't the moment for confession. It was the moment to be the place she could land. Hours passed. The intensity of the storm outside slowly faded, but the intensity inside the room grew heavy with unspoken truths. When midnight settled in, and the world outside finally quieted, Claire looked up at me with eyes, so vulnerable, they nearly stole my breath. She hesitated before speaking, as if the question might break her. The room felt still, the air charged with something I couldn't yet name. She told me she didn't want to be alone tonight, that the thought of lying awake by herself, the thought of being swallowed by the silence, terrified her. Then, with a trembling voice, she asked the question that froze everything around me. She asked if there was space left in my bed. The words hit harder than any storm, not because of what they implied, but because of what they revealed. Her loneliness, her fear, her need for human closeness after so many months of pretending she didn't need anyone. I had loved Claire for years, quietly and from a distance, never expecting anything in return. Hearing her ask to stay with me, even for a night, felt like catching a breath I had been holding far too long. But what I felt most wasn't excitement. It was protectiveness. I didn't want her to think she had to earn her place here. I wanted her to know she wasn't a burden, wasn't an afterthought, wasn't someone who drifted back into my life out of desperation. I wanted her to understand she had always had a place here, even when she was thousands of miles away. So instead of simply saying yes, I told her something that had been sitting quietly in my heart for years. I told her that if she asked for a place in my bed, I needed to know what she truly wanted. Because if she said she wanted to stay, she had to know she didn't have to leave when the storm stopped. If she wanted to stay forever, there would always be space for her. She broke into tears, not the painful kind, but the kind that comes after carrying too much for too long. She leaned into me, burying her face against my shoulder, as if she finally allowed someone else to catch some of the weight she'd been carrying. We didn't go to bed right away. Instead, we sat together on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, talking softly about everything she had been holding inside. She admitted she had felt lost since her parents died, drifting through life with no sense of home. She told me she had thought about me often, but felt ashamed for disappearing, and she confessed that when she finally couldn't breathe under the weight of her grief, something inside her whispered my name, the only person who had ever made her feel safe without having to try. As she rested her head near my chest, I felt her breathing finally slow, the tension uncoiling from her shoulders. It struck me how much she had changed, how much she had endured, and how much she still needed to heal. But more importantly, it struck me that healing didn't always begin with strength. It often began with the courage to ask for help. She eventually fell asleep against me, the exhaustion of weeks catching up to her. I didn't move. I didn't dare to. Holding her felt like holding something fragile, something precious, something that had been missing from my life for far too long. And in that stillness, I made a silent promise: if she stayed, truly stayed, I would never let her feel alone again. Later, when I carried her to my bed and tucked her under the blankets, she stirred slightly, reaching for my hand without waking. She held it gently, as if even in sleep she was afraid I might disappear. I lay beside her, not touching, not crossing any line, just being near her. It felt like the most natural thing in the world. In the quiet of that early morning, watching the soft rise and fall of her breath, I felt something inside me shift. The storm outside had ended, but the storm in my life had finally calmed too. Healing had finally begun, not just for her, but for me as well. If this story has touched your heart even a little, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. Your support truly means more than you know. Before the final moment of the story, I want to ask viewers one simple thing. Comment below, would you have opened the door for her? When dawn finally crept across the room, Claire opened her eyes and looked at me with a softness I had never seen before. She whispered that my house didn't feel like just a house anymore. She said it felt like home. And in that moment, I realized something profound. Maybe she hadn't come to me because of the storm outside. Maybe she came because she was finally ready to stop running. Maybe she came because she believed deep down that home wasn't a place, it was a person. And she had always known exactly who that person was.